Okay. Can you start a podcast with me, please? I need something to do.
Pastrnak sent it out in front of Malkin to save this game! Elias Lindholm looks to the heavens.
Here's a chance. Patra right in on goal. He scores. Oh my, what a move by the rookie.
2-on-1. Pastrnak moving in with Marchand. Get it to it. Score!
The zone. Coyle dances in. Backhand score!
Lindholm right wing corner. Pastrnak is there. He scores! David Pastrnak wins it for Boston.
Tape and reading it. It's Mike Gardner calling from the Hockey Hall of Fame, and I'm here with Ron Francis, who is the chairman of the Hockey Hall of Fame committee, and we've got some news for you. The Trigger photos show and that's the thing that I come on in 26 spot. Well, congratulations.
Oh my God. Thank you so much. I mean, it's never in a million years have I ever imagined this. So I'm very, very thankful. Really honored, very emotional right now. But yeah, thank you so much. It really means a lot. Amazing news. Thank you so much.
Welcome in, everyone, to another episode, summer series of Bruins Tape to Tape. We are recording on Monday, June 22nd, which turns out it is a historical day for Patrice Bergeron, a historical day for the Boston Bruins franchise. As you can glean from the clip you just listened to, Patrice Bergeron is now officially a member of the Hockey Hall of Fame as a first-year ballottee. So before we take a deep dive into what is an exceptional career for an exceptional hockey player and an exceptional person, I want to welcome in my co-host, Caroline with a K. Are you as excited as I am? Because I literally have goosebumps.
I have watched that video. I've watched other angles of that video over and over again. I have already started to see some of the official tribute videos come in every time. I have literal goosebumps watching. And the first time I saw that video clip, you could hear he got choked up in that moment. Once that happened, head to toe goosebumps.
I'm not going to lie. I'm a tough on the exterior, but a softie on the inside when it comes to things like this. And so I got a bit teary-eyed. For me personally, I've been watching the Boston Bruins for a very, very long time. And I have always said to friends, members of my family, other hockey fans, there are only 2 jersey numbers that you will ever see me wear at a TD Garden game or in an alternative arena. That would be number 4 and number 37.
Yes.
That's it for me. Doesn't mean it's the be all or end all, but for me personally, the moments that are special for me related to the Boston Bruins are directly related to watching Robert Gordon Orr and Patrice Bergeron.
Yeah. And what I think makes him that much more special, what I think sets Bergeron apart from a lot of Hockey Hall of Famers, a lot of Bruins who have their numbers retired up in the rafters, is the fact that he is a son of the Boston Bruins. He came in as an 18-year-old, one single team that entire time. That's extra special because he was able to have such a long and distinguished impact, not just on the game of hockey, not just on his position as the perfect hockey player, the pinnacle of what it means to be a center, but as a part of the Boston Bruins, what he did, how he defined what it meant to be a Bruin was really incredible because when he came in, it was during a dark period, so to speak, for the Boston Bruins. And his talent and his personality and how he approached the game, coupled with the leadership that Zdeno Chara brought in, really brought being a Bruins fan to a new level, what it meant to be a Bruin to a new level, and it ushered in the third golden age of this franchise.
It's amazing. He came as an 18-year-old kid who struggled a little bit with the English language, but he assimilated very well, did everything that was asked of him, never stepped outside of the bounds of being a good hockey player, a class act, a good human. I dare anyone to find anyone out there who can say anything negative about Patrice Bergeron, I think. And again, it sounds like we are throwing petals at his feet, as we should. No, because honestly, I've raised 2 hockey players. You are raising a hockey player right now. And I know there's a lot of conversation about athletes shouldn't be held as role models, right? That's not what their role is. Their role is they've been gifted with certain talents and abilities and trajectories that none of us can fathom. However, when you have a person such as Patrice Bergeron, who embodies all that you want your athlete person to be, you go ahead and you emulate that person all day, every day, as far as I'm concerned.
There's always been the argument, you do what it takes to win, even if it means you're not necessarily the best person or the most well-liked by everybody. And to your point that should we really be raising athletes up to be role models? Because they're people and people are flawed. And there's always going to be something about a person or how they approach life or how they approach the game that might just rub someone the wrong way. When we talk about Patrice Bergeron as the perfect player, it's almost as if he were just made to be the example that everyone really should be held up against. He's called the perfect player for a multitude of reasons. He had incredible elite offensive and elite defensive abilities. We've talked about it on this podcast so many times that the role of a center in the game of hockey isn't just to play with 2 forwards, but the best centers are also centering your defensive pairing, thus making 2 lines out there at the same time. A lot of centers specialize in one area over the other. They're either very offensive or they're very defensive. There's nothing necessarily wrong with being one or the other, but he was quite literally both. They should rename the Selke Trophy after him because he has the record number of trophies in that regard.
He won 6. He was nominated 12 times. I mean, it's crazy. His career was 19 seasons, and you were nominated 12 times for the Selke Trophy. He's won Olympic gold. He's won a Stanley Cup.
The triple gold.
Yeah.
His hockey IQ, which is something that can be incredibly difficult to really articulate and define, it was Einstein-level degree of IQ. He always seemed to know exactly what was happening or was about to happen on the ice and could put himself in that position where he knew he was needed, where he could maximize his impact and efficiency. You talked about his professionalism, and I think we have heard from countless former teammates, rivals, just how professional, humble, accountable, like a good human he is. And you mentioned the Triple Gold Club, where he won Stanley Cup, Olympic gold medals, World Championship gold, Junior gold. He was the only inductee this year who was eligible, who was already a member of that club. His humility, even in that video, is so genuine and believable because I think that's just who he is and makes seeing him get everything that he deserves that much sweeter.
Even Marco Sturm, was because Marco played with him, obviously, when he was a member of the Bruins, and joked about the fact that it was such an honor, not surprised that Patrice Bergeron was nominated, but jokingly said kind of like him to come back out of retirement because he looks fit enough to be ready to play. And a former Bruins coach, Jim Montgomery, gave us the impression that Patrice Bergeron was basically running the show.
Yes, I remember that.
He was making Jim's job as a first-year coach with the Bruins so easy for him. Just goes to show you the person that he is. And I think what we sometimes forget about is early in Patrice's career, he suffered a concussion that we all thought was ending his career before it even started. And I believe it was back in 2007.
We were worried it was another Eric Lindros situation.
He was knocked unconscious. He was carried off the ice. He did not play the remainder of that season. And there was a great deal of concern as to whether this young player who we had such high hopes for was going to be able to come back and play this game at the same level. And let's not forget that there was a Stanley Cup Finals against the Chicago Blackhawks where...
This is what makes him just another level. 2013, right? He played Game 6.
Game 6, and Game 6 ended. We don't need to go into the sad, pathetic details of how Game 6 ended. The Bruins were trying to force a Game 7 to go back to Chicago. Blackhawks ended up hoisting the Stanley Cup on TD Garden ice. But later in the evening, Patrice Bergeron was immediately transported to Mass General Hospital because he was playing with a separated shoulder, a punctured lung, and a fractured rib.
Correct.
Now, there's speculation about whether or not he would have been able to play Game 7, but this just shows the degree to which, he put himself in, and just hockey players in general. That trophy means that much to them. But for him to have played with those types of injuries, to be available to his teammates, speaks volumes.
Exactly. So he's not the only one who got selected. But we can talk about
He is not.
For days and days.
No, we could, but we won't, because there's going to be a celebration exclusively for Patrice at some point during the 2026-2027 season by the Boston Bruins. But I will say, I was a little surprised by the other members of this class of the Hall of Fame, because I didn't see this coming.
As a quick refresher on how voting happens, you create value and desirability by limiting how many people can go into the Hall in any given year. When it comes to players, the maximum number of male players that can be inducted right now is 4. So up to 4 men and up to 2 women. And this year, they opted for 3 male players and 1 female player. What's amazing is the fact that the other 2 players are goaltenders. And I love that.
We had talked off air about who we thought would make the cut, so to speak. And I don't think I had either of these 2 goalies, to be perfectly honest with you, on my radar.
Perhaps not this year, but eventually.
Eventually, yes.
The 2 players being Carey Price, who is arguably the Canadiens' most impactful goaltender since Patrick Waugh himself. And then the other player, Pecorina from the Nashville Predators. I got to tell you, I had not heard that name, thought of that name in what seems like a lifetime.
So to your point, to have 2 goalies in there, and there were a lot of goalies on the list. 2 of which were former Bruins as well. Tim Thomas was on the list, and Tuukka Rask. Ryan Miller was on. There were a lot of goaltending candidates.
Yeah, look, goalies always kind of get the short shrift when it comes to getting inducted into the Hall of Fame. We talked about it in our previous episode about how much harder that position is because you're held to just such an incredible standard very frequently. And I thought it was exciting to see that Carey Price got in. I'm always going to root against the Habs. But as you and I have said many times, we are okay with some degree of success on behalf of the Montreal Canadiens if that means that the rivalry is fed and fostered.
Correct.
And I will often also say that I can very much so be a fan of a team's goaltender, separate from being any sort of fan or supporter of said team.
We can appreciate, right, despite what our differences are from team to team or whatever the rivalry is, you can appreciate greatness when you see it. You can appreciate seeing an honest effort on the ice.
Yes. A little bit of a rundown. Let's talk first about Carey Price, since we're talking about him. He won a Vezina in 2015. He has a gold medal. No Stanley Cups.
Oh.
But a career save percentage of .917.
He helped the Canadiens reach the Stanley Cup final in 2021. He won the Vezina Trophy and the Hart Trophy, both in the same year. So not only was he given the nod as the best goalie during the 2014-2015 season, he also won the most valuable player that same year.
Yes. And he, at one point, don't forget, he was the highest paid tender ever.
That's correct. Was one of the most astronomical contracts ever seen. Insane.
He signed his 8-year, $84 million extension in 2017, and the deal carried a $10.5 million average annual value. This is going to be one of those that goes down in history a little bit like the Rick DiPietro contract from 2006. The Islanders signed DiPietro to a 15-year, can you imagine? 15-year, $67.5 million contract worth $4.5 million annually. It was the longest contract in NHL history at the time. And so they were paying him, even after he retired, up until 2021. However, because Carey Price, had a right knee injury issue, it started as a torn meniscus, turned into severe cartilage damage. He opted to not go into the surgery, etc. Knees on a goalie, hips on a goalie, forget about it. But because of the weird way that he retired but didn't retire, like everybody was like, he's done playing, but he's not actually retired. So that way he could then continue to be paid. So his salary was on the books after he actually stopped playing. And at the very end of his contract, if you recall, and you may see a little bit of this joke going around the league, I believe it was San Jose's most famous goalie that never played, because at one point at the very end, the Habs had to unload that contract, and San Jose needed to be above the floor.
And so San Jose still has one more season. They're still technically paying Carey Price. Carey Price had some demons that he was dealing with, which prompted him to step away from the game to address his own mental well-being, which is understandable, right? It's a real thing, folks. Mental health issues are real, and they can have a varying degree of impact on individuals. You know, he's a guy, I wouldn't have been upset to see him hoist a Stanley Cup because, man, he was a friggin' gamer.
Yes.
Like, how many times did those Canadians break the hearts of the Boston Bruins with him in net? I don't know how many times I'd be watching games saying, why can't we figure this guy out? Why can't we get anything by this guy?
Yeah. From 2013 to 2017, he was arguably the best goalie in the world. That's why he got that massive contract. He was nearly textbook in terms of his technique. He was exceptional with his positioning. He hardly wasted any movement. He could track that puck like a heat-seeking missile. I mean, it's that era of goaltender that certainly no longer exists in the NHL. And I think in, 2 years, we're going to see this conversation come right back around when the last of those goaltenders reaches eligibility in Marc-Andre Fleury. But
Pekka Rinne.
Yeah.
There's no disputing the importance that Pekka Rinne had as a member of the Nashville Predators.
First of all, he was huge, 6'5",
Huge.
during a time when goalies still were not giants.
217 pounds.
Yeah, huge.
Another guy who started and finished his career with the same franchise.
Yep.
Leading them to some pretty memorable seasons.
And he was drafted 258th overall, which is the 8th round, by the way, in 2004. And so I think that's what makes his success that much more awesome. It's awesome to see with a .917 career save percentage. He won a Vezina in 2018, 369 wins. Anytime an NHL goalie can get you 300 wins, I mean, that's an incredible achievement. 300 is really when you start to get into elite territory. And he was a very athletic and explosive goaltender. He was very aggressive in the butterfly, fantastic with the glove hand. I mean, again, being so huge, his reach was just outrageous. And he led the Nashville Predators to their first conference final and their first Stanley Cup final in 2017. I think I don't want to say that he's underrated because obviously he's just now gotten some incredible recognition by getting into the Hall, but I think he's a great role model for young kids, goalies, in the sense that, look, you don't have to come out looking perfect like Carey Price when you start. You can still be a phenomenal goaltender. You can achieve a lot of amazing things, even as an imperfect goalie and starting from literally the bottom, the 8th round.
Right.
Going really far, no Stanley Cups, but it is not the end all be all.
His numbers alone, his impact to the success of that franchise, seemingly is enough. Get him the nod into the Hall of Fame.
For sure.
Then we have a young lady, Cindy Curley. I'll let you speak to her.
Cindy Curley, she's a throwback a little bit. And you have to keep in mind with the recent success and growth and development of the PWHL. And I just posted on our Substack a little bit of information just about pathway for women in professional hockey, but the ceiling that has consistently been raised over and over again for women in hockey. And so we're probably still a number of years away from some of the most famously well-known current modern day women getting into the Hall. But she's an earlier pioneer. She played at Providence College back in the mid-'80s, but she was the captain of the U.S. women's national team. Women didn't play at the Olympics, which is arguably the crown jewel of international play until 1998. So outside of her time period, but there was still international play. So she was the captain of the U.S. women's national team from 1989 to 1996. She competed in the first official IIHF Women's World Championships in 1990. So if you think about it, and again, I highly recommend reading my recent post on the Substack about the pathway to the PWHL for women. Women have been playing hockey on college campuses since the late 1800s, the same amount of time as men, but women's varsity college hockey came about in the 1960s and really started to then the next level was the IIHF, which happened in 1990, and then in 1998 in Nagano, and then today's PWHL. And so she was part of one of those firsts, which was the international play. And the 1990 World Championship was absolutely historic. It was the inaugural Women's World Championships. It was in Ottawa. She produced one of the greatest tournaments ever. She had 11 goals, 12 assists, 23 points in 5 games. Just 5 games. Like 10 goals in 5 games. Now, yes, okay, there's going to be women's hockey haters out there. Well, but how many other teams were they playing against that could have possibly been good? It doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter.
11 goals, for crying out loud. Those totals remain single tournament records at the Women's World Championship to this day in 2026. She entered the U.S. Hockey Hall of Fame in 2013, and so she is rightly so a member of the 2026 Hockey Hall of Fame class of women because she had such an incredible impact at one of those ceiling stages of women's hockey, leading us to eventually.
Somebody has to be the pioneer for all of these things to grow and change and be open and accessible, right? And she is clearly one of those women. Paved the way for what we're seeing now.
Yes.
And the fact that there is a professional women's hockey league that is growing, it's expanding.
Players like Cameron Granato and Haley Wickenheiser and Angela James, Hillary Knight, all of these women, they have had the opportunity and the ability to play in these international tournaments and these professional leagues because of the foundations that were laid by women like Curley. She was a pioneer. She helped grow women's hockey long before there were Olympics for women and the professional leagues. And so she's a Massachusetts native too, by the way. So for New England hockey fans, she is arguably one of the greatest players to ever come out of women's hockey in Massachusetts. I love it. I didn't know much about her, I'm sorry to say, but when I've learned about her, what I've learned has been very admirable.
No, and I mean, you're not alone. I didn't know much about her either. And I'm sure that there are many hockey fans out there who are starting to pay more attention, learn more about the women's game, looking back on how did we get to where we are now? Who's paved the way for these young college athletes now to know, hey, I could potentially play professionally. And then we have Keith Tkachuk. Now, this has been...
I don't want to talk about it.
Well, we have to, because this is going to segue into a lot of big NHL news that has happened in recent days.
Yes.
So it's been a big week for the Tkachuk family.
Yes, for that family in particular. I was honestly a little bit surprised. I mean, I know that he had a very particular reputation. I remember him playing back in the day, but that one was a little bit of a surprise, I guess. That was the one. I forget. See, I didn't even remember that he was in. You had to remind
because
me.
you block out anything having to do with any Tkachuks.
I do, because I hate them so much. I'm okay with you calling me out on that bias. I know it's a fact.
That's just how you roll.
It's just how I am. I hate them so much.
But we need to talk about them in our next segment, which is all the news that has built up. Obviously, the headline news is the Hockey Hall of Fame, and Keith Tkachuk, father of Matt and Brady Tkachuk, is now a member of the Hockey Hall of Fame class of 2026.
What is interesting about Keith Tkachuk, I remember him from the later part of his career. In my mind, and I don't know if this is universal, I think of him, I think of the St. Louis Blues. But he did play for 4 teams over the course of 18 seasons. So 538 goals, 527 assists, 1,065 points, over 2,200 penalty minutes. He became only the 4th American-born player to reach 500 goals and one of the first great U.S. power forwards. And again, I remember him from later in his career. So he's one that I probably couldn't necessarily appreciate anyway if I didn't have my bias.
I do remember his play. I do. And I know he was a tough SOB.
He was a power forward during the time period where that was what you wanted to be. I mean, think Cam Neely. He is the archetype for the power forward. And so that's what made him particularly effective, because a power forward isn't just an enforcer, but a power forward is an enforcer who has that goal scoring ability, just like any other elite goal scorer of today. That's why they don't exist, because those elite goal scorers of today have kind of taken over, and that's the new trend for goal scoring.
The local boy, he was from Melrose, Massachusetts. 235 pounds skating down on you, okay?
Yeah, yes.
Tell me you're not going to get the hell out of the way when you see that coming at you. But there you have it, folks. The class of 2026 Hall of Famers. There you have it. So now we just need to talk about all of the chaos that has started to ensue within the league now that the Stanley Cup Finals are over. I don't know if the Carolina Hurricanes are still partying, but they're having a time, as they well should. But there's been a great deal of news happening in the league that we are going to talk about with our remaining time during this episode.
Let's hope it's a little bit more of an exciting off-season than last year, because last year felt a little underwhelming.
Well, it's been exciting for some teams, but I have a funny feeling that it won't be overly exciting for the Boston Bruins, but we shall see. We have so much to talk about. There have been trades made already. There have been coaching hires made already. Teams are getting prepared for the draft, which is happening on June 26th. And just a little bit of housekeeping for our listeners. For next week's episode, we are going to be re-airing an episode that we had done last season as we're approaching development camp. So we're going to bring that episode back to life. And then our official season 4 starts July 7th. We've got free agency that starts July 1st. The draft will have come and gone by then. We talked about in the intro, there's been a lot happening since the Carolina Hurricanes won the Stanley Cup. And congratulations. They were a freaking well-oiled machine. I have to give them credit. And I honestly didn't mind seeing Taylor Hall lift the Stanley Cup. We also had some retirement news. Jonathan Toews is calling it a career.
Yep. Yeah, that's not too surprising. I feel so bad for him in some regards in that his career was derailed pretty significantly because of long COVID.
He would have been a guy that I would have guessed. I would have put money on the fact that he would have retired. If things had fallen differently for him, he would have retired as a Chicago Blackhawk.
Yeah, and the only thing that surprised me was the fact that he made an announcement about it, because I also forgot that he was...
I forgot he was in Winnipeg.
Yes.
Yeah.
And this is a guy who, he had a very impressive career, a number of Stanley Cups.
Clutch. Wasn't he referred to as Captain Clutch?
Yeah. But it would be remiss to not mention the fact that some of his legacy is slightly tarnished because he came from a team where there was the Kyle Beach incident.
Yeah, sadly, that did happen during his tenure
during his captaincy. So to what degree was he complicit in knowing? And unfortunately, that's always going to mar his legacy. But it's two things can be true, right? That happened, and you can feel sorry for someone that their career had to be ended because of long-term COVID, and it's just not the way you would want to see somebody go out.
And the lengths to which he went to heal himself in order to come back to play. He wanted to keep playing. And now we get down to trades that are happening. And I want to jump to what I think is friggin' blockbuster trade here. So for any of you who haven't been paying attention or you're taking the summer off, which I don't blame you, Brady Tkachuk is now a Florida Panther.
You want to talk about worst kept secrets, like we were saying about Patrice Bergeron?
I know, right?
Literally, nobody should have been shocked. I think we knew a couple of seasons ago, after his brother Matthew was doing really well in Florida, and this was in their lead up to their first Stanley Cup appearance, and then, of course, the subsequent 2 Cup wins. We all knew that he wanted to go there. There was speculation even on other podcasts and from other analysts who already started to look at the numbers back in March. I saw from what Chaos after the trade deadline, just looking at what's available for cap and looking at who's got to be signed. Nobody's shocked. I think the only part for me that was a little bit surprising is just how good the return was that Ottawa won that trade, in my opinion.
When you lose a cornerstone piece like Brady Tkachuk, I mean, let's face fact, he was being paid as a kind of a franchise-altering player, right? He was their captain. The general manager and Brady Tkachuk himself, as early as April, were trying to debunk all these stories about him wanting out of Ottawa and his commitment to the team. And even the general manager called it, quote unquote, nonsense, right? But we've all learned, we've been sports fans long enough to know that they can say whatever they want, but when push comes to shove, it's still a business. And teams and players are going to make decisions that are in their best business interest. What troubles me now is the pattern that I'm seeing in that there only seem to be, in the National Hockey League, 3 wanted destinations for players to go to. Florida, Vegas, and Minnesota. Every time you hear about one of these notable players wanting to make a change, those are the teams that consistently come up. Boston wasn't even on Brady Tkachuk's radar in terms of teams that he wanted to be traded to. And I know there was sports talk show fodder about that. But I think that's what I worry about in terms of when you get to a point and you want to go where you believe and you think you have the best chance of winning and succeeding. There are financial reasons that I know Florida and Vegas are prime destinations because of the tax or no tax implications. But how do you end up standing a chance to compete in getting any of these guys?
So in the case of Brady Tkachuk, he wasn't going to go anywhere except for Florida. So nobody else had a shot because that's the only place that he was going to go.
Honestly, he said there were other teams, but if you have an
They all
opportunity, no, but you know what? And I know we have different opinions on the Kachuk brothers. I would still take them on my team. Okay. I would still take them on my team. I'd be lying if I didn't say I wouldn't take them on my team. But if you have an opportunity to go and play with your sibling, why not take it? The Foligno brothers are together in Minnesota.
Right. That was the other thing, right? When you look at the trade with Uncle Nick going to Minnesota, again, his brother is there, right? I wouldn't be shocked if at some point we see one of the New Jersey Hughes go to Minnesota, because that's where Quinn is, right? So I think part of this is a little bit of a coincidence. Maybe what we see is implicit bias. Of course, they're all going there, but they also have personal connections to those places. So that could be a thing. I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm just saying it all looks very convenient.
But it just goes to show the Florida Panthers are not afraid to make a big deal, to part with all of those draft picks. I think the Ottawa Senators were trying to hold out for an active player on the Panthers rosters. And the Panthers were like, yeah, no way, Jose. But gave them all of those draft picks in return because they didn't like being on the sidelines watching what was happening. And they have, is it Bill Zito who's there? Sam, right?
Pretty
He's
aggressive.
not afraid. He's not afraid.
And I think this was a perfect storm. My understanding and reading the situation, Brady probably has been looking for ways to make it happen so he can go and play with his brother. And if Ottawa wasn't going to be able to get a body in return, then it worked out that Brady was willing to leave and leave with his contract dollars in an effort to potentially make a real hard run at getting Jason Robertson, who is expensive, very expensive.
I did read somewhere, don't be surprised if the Ottawa Senators put in a massive potential offer sheet on Jason Robertson, which I love that kind of crap. I say, do it, right?
Yeah,
do
it's been a couple seasons we've seen our last one.
No, it's like enough of this being cordial with each other. Friggin' do it.
And so the other thing that has driven me a little bit nuts about the free agency in the last couple of seasons, and I want to say that I heard in a 32 Thoughts episode from Frege, the league, I think, wants to move away from what they call the sign and trade, which also drives me nuts because it's technically a trade and sign, but whatever. The concept of the sign and trade, because it's flirting with tampering.
Because how do you do that if you're not having the conversation about the sign?
Right? Exactly. So what happened with Mitch Marner, the fact that he was going to be eligible to go onto the market and he never even did because he got traded and then signed an extension. No one else had a chance.
No. And we want the drama about
it. We want to be entertained.
Right? We want the drama. Let's facts. Like, I want to see an offer sheet if Ottawa wants to throw a boatload. And, Brady, a little bit of it in Ottawa because they had that entire situation with Lise Omar and all of the bullshit that was being spread out that. And, Brady being a captain, having to stand up there and answer those, family members being nonsense, right? The fact that it made the play, despite everything that they had, was a pretty significant accomplishment. I know, some people expected them to make a little bit more noise. Brady had absolutely he took full, to his credit, he took full when they got ousted. Absolute, full and complete ownership of it, which any good captain would do.
No, definitely. Although I will say, I don't feel bad for him at all because he then had his father on his podcast and let his dad go off about soft players with mental health issues and didn't say anything when he knew
that was not a good look.
He had to know why his goalie had to leave at the end of a game because he was having panic attacks out there. He had the year he deserved.
Yeah, that was a bad look.
No one will slander Linus to me. Nobody slanders Linus.
And you know what? Maybe after the podcast, the boys said to him, Dad, why the hell did you say that? You know, they didn't want to embarrass their father on air.
But they could have cut it. Why not cut it?
I know, they should have cut it.
I think he agreed.
I'm still saying I would take them on my team.
But looking at the trades that have already happened so
Yes.
far, of the big ones, of any sort of notable names, only one of them has resulted in players swapping. So Simon Benoit and Joseph Wall, I thought were pretty sizable initial trades. That was really the one that kind of kicked off the trading post-cup before free agency. The other big trade that was also a sign-in trade also involved Toronto, and that was with Darren Radish between Tampa and Toronto. There better not be more of these because nobody likes these.
No, they're kind of a snooze fest. But I mean, I would like to see our team do any trade at this point. And I know that Pavel Zacha's name is coming up a bit in the rumor mill.
Yep. And Lohrei and the Bruins have participated in a trade thus far. Andre Gasso and a 4th round for this year's 26 draft went to San Jose in exchange for 2 picks for this year that were originally owned by Florida and also by Montreal.
Mason Lohrei's name is coming up again, too, as potential trade. And I saw one, and I hope this was a joke, a straight-up exchange, Lohrei for Darnell Nurse.
No!
What are we doing here?
Oh, God. Oh, God.
And that's another topic of conversation we need to talk about, because we just touched upon the fact that Leafs finally filled their coaching vacancy.
Yep.
There right now is only one coaching vacancy left, and that is the Edmonton Oilers. And tell me that they can't be serious about hiring Mike Beck. I mean, I do believe in second chances and people learning lessons.
But this guy's never changed.
But he's never changed. And so at this point, don't you have to look and say a leopard never changes his spots?
And he's not even...
And he's
really
not even... Right.
He's not... It's not like Tortorella, who can be an ass, or Cassidy, who can be a real jerk and a hard ass. Those men have cups. They have gone deep into playoffs many times in their career. Mike Babcock has really not done squat. And what I find so bizarre about everything that I'm seeing right now, so first of all, the timing of the investigation, what a joke. You only are investigating him now after this instead of after actually what happened in Columbus, where he's looking at players' photos and making them uncomfortable to the point that they fired him before the season even started and then nobody followed up. Oh, that's right. He can't violate an abuse policy if there is no abuse policy at the NHL level. So that's stupid. What are they going to investigate him for? They don't have any policies related to what he has done, being an abusive prick, sitting Mike Modano after game 1499, sitting Chris Chelios. Like, why would you ever sit those guys?
This guy is a first-class asshole.
Holy.
There's no two ways about it, in my view. He's a first-class asshole.
And it could be a superstar player who gets his wrath because he clearly gets off on being a dick to these people and having that power and control. But God forbid you're a journeyman. Down the line, your life is going to be hell. And the people who work for the organization, they've reported, your training staff, your facilities people, your office people, they've reported him being just a terrible person. But then what's weird is the fact that, okay, they made the announcement. They asked, is it okay? Can we hire him? The NHL first said, yeah. Oh, wait, let's investigate. No, he's cleared. But they still haven't hired him? So what's happening in Edmonton?
Right.
Like, you went through the trouble. You knew it was probably going to be a thing. That's why you asked, is it okay?
I wonder if they're now worried about the PR machine and the blowback that may surface if they actually hire him.
So have they moved on?
I would like to hear what Connor McDavid or Leon Draisaitl, listen, that kid has got to run as far away from that freaking organization as he can if he ever wants a chance to win a Stanley Cup. Because it's not going to happen there. I just can't see it happening there for him.
Watching Edmonton function is very similar to watching Toronto function.
I mean, do they have a real goaltender yet?
No.
Okay? Do they have a legit goaltender yet? You should be more worried about getting yourself a legit freaking goalie than who the coach is going to be.
Yeah. And what's the rush? Wait for Bruce Cassidy.
Well,
if that's what you want,
I
what's
don't
the
know
rush?
because, again, why hasn't Vegas given him the go-ahead yet?
We know, because they're jerks and they're in division, and that's why.
This is more, not fodder, but more drama. But it's just like, what are we doing here? How is it okay for you to deny him the right to go and coach somewhere?
Yeah.
I don't know where Edmonton is picking in the draft, but the draft is this week. Wouldn't you like any potential players that you draft to know who your coach is going to be? Wouldn't it be nice for the coach to be up there on the stage with other team representatives?
I think that's the rush. And I don't know now off the top of my head what they were doing in between the end of the season. I feel like it took them a long time to fire their coach. They didn't fire him right away. So some of this is also piss poor planning on your part, constitutes an emergency. It's not supposed to constitute an emergency on mine, but has turned into that. And now Edmonton's scrambling because they mishandled it. They can't have a full-on coaching search like most other places. So I think they've dug themselves into a little bit of a hole here.
Anyway, the draft. What do you expect from our team? I, myself, get very worried about having the Bruins organization with draft picks. Just because I don't have a lot of faith in their ability to identify players that fit whatever system that they want to play.
Yeah. So let's see. Boston isn't picking until the 23rd spot of the first round. So they still have a first round, which is great because there were a number of years where we didn't even have a first round pick. I have such low expectations, especially Don Sweeney is not a draft guy. He's been better, but...
No, when we said this last year, you and I could have drafted James Hagan. It doesn't take rocket science.
No. And it's my understanding this particular draft class, while talented, certainly not as strong as other past recent draft classes in general. Like even looking at Gavin McKenna, he is no Connor Bedard, Macklin Celebrini. He's great, but...
Well, honestly, I think Macklin Celebrini is far better performance than Connor Bedard at this point. But
he's more entertaining, to say the least. But
we'll see what happens during free agency. At a minimum, I think Don Sweeney needs to move Jonas Korpisalo. There has to be a scenario where Jonas Korpisalo is dealt from the Boston Bruins.
Yeah. And there's still going to be a flurry of trades, especially as we get closer and closer first to the lead up to the draft. And then it'll chill out for probably like 48 hours. And then the timeline flips again. As you recall, the free agency is the bookend of the high holy period of the NHL, which starts with the trade deadline going into the insanity of playoffs. You've got the draft lottery, you've got the cup, you've got the draft itself, and then dev camp for pretty much every club, and then free agency, and all of that kind of happening at the exact same time. One of the busiest 10 days across the calendar. And so you're going to see some trading happening between today and
jockeying
Friday.
for better position at the draft to meet a need that they want to fill for their team.
There's going to be then the draft, and then a lot of the new draftees are going to be sent straight to their new home cities for development camp. Interestingly enough, James Hagan's not going to be at dev camp, primarily because this kid has been playing basically hockey nonstop since August.
Yeah.
So he's rightly excused from dev camp, but we'll probably see him then again at rookie camp. It's going to be a crazy time. And then in that stretch, you've got all these trades that are going to be happening literally right up until noon on July 1st.
Yeah.
And for the Bruins, it's my understanding in regards to Victor Arvidsson, that conversations are still ongoing and that it's a question of term. So we could still very well see an extension signed beforehand. We could still see him sign a brand new contract with the Boston Bruins post July 1. If Boston is where he really wants to be, he could just exist there without a contract if he doesn't want to go anywhere else. And there could still be trades happening too. Trades happen in a flurry before the free agency because, again, these sign-in trades and getting that whole situation. But trades can happen up until a roster has to be submitted in September.
But I'll be curious to see what scenarios the Bruins come up with. As I said earlier on, I have seen Pavel Zacha's name being thrown around as potential on-the-move candidate. And again, Victor Arvidsson, he could be helpful not only to the Bruins, but he could be helpful to another team. I would like to think that John Sweeney is open to listening to any and all offers being made, or he's working the phones to see what offers he can get. But I don't see a scenario where the Bruins are going to be able to address their number one needs, which is a true, kind of, I hate this term, puck-moving defenseman and a number one, number two center.
Boston has to do something of note in the next 10 days, period. We have to see something. I don't care if it's only one, and if it's only one, it better be a defenseman. To me, that is what I need to see. If Boston wants to smartly build on what they accomplished last year, this past season, they need to do it intentionally and within the core ideology of this franchise, which is defense first. As we've discussed, they're great on the back end. Even if Korpisalo doesn't get moved, fine. We got to get that D squared away. Like that, to me, priority, I think.
I'm more of the mindset of I want them to address getting help for Pasta and try to figure out a way to balance scoring because we had it in buckets, but we didn't have it consistently.
Correct.
And even with the sound defensive structure, you're not going to win a whole ton of games if you can't score more goals than the other team does. But from what I have read and seen, there's nothing really available in this free agency class. So now you're looking at potentially another year down the road, another year of Pasta McAvoy's 4 years, potentially being burned, right?
They're 30. I know. I hope they're smart and they surprise us. It doesn't need to be a crazy blockbuster.
And how do you draw people here? How do you draw people here where before you had a winning culture? And I'm not saying we have a loser's mentality here. That's not what I'm saying at all. But we're not in the same position as other teams now in the league because that balance is starting to come to fruition, that parity where, no, I can go here and win potentially next year where you guys are still a year, 2, 3 years out. And at that point, Pasta's going to be 2 or 3 years older. McAvoy's going to be 2. These are unsettling times for the Boston Bruins franchise. We're not basement dwellers, and I don't know that we're going to hit that rock bottom. And right?
We already did. That was the previous season.
Yeah.
But no, to your point, I think what you're saying is actually really spot on in that for the magic elixir player, that magical player who can really make those things happen, that's going to be some guy who is looking to move to a team that is within a year or two of a cup, right? Mm-hmm. So Boston is not the place where that superstar easy fix player is going to pick, but Boston will always be a desirable destination for literally every other category of player. Literally every category of player because of just what the franchise represents. So I'm not worried in terms of Boston being able to find that diamond in the rough player like we got with someone like Fraser Minton, although he didn't also have really a choice in coming to Boston. Boston is a desirable destination because of the history, because we have a winning culture on the whole. This is a team that wins. This is an organization. This is a fan base that won't accept anything less.
And I think players like that. They like to be held accountable. Mm-hmm. And Bruins fans are very willing to do that.
Yes.
Sometimes we're nasty, but One more thing that I wanted to touch on, which I found it really interesting, going through NHL.com. And besides the Boston Bruins, did you know that there were other teams in the league that did not have captains? The Bruins weren't the only ones.
Well, I knew that Chicago traded their captain and Vancouver traded their captain this past season. And I'm trying to think of who else might be Sans captain. The Kings would be Sans captain.
San Jose and the St. Louis Blues are Sans captains. Interesting little tidbit.
Yes.
And the Bruins have announced their development camp schedule for 2026. Development camp begins on Monday, June 29th. And myself, Caroline, and friend of the pod, Mary Beth, we will be in the house at some point during these sessions watching the growth and the development and see if we see any diamonds in the rough.
Yes. I'm very excited to see what these guys can do.
You know, sometimes there's someone who comes out of nowhere that surprises the hell out of you. And you say to yourself, let's hope this guy gets an invitation to training camp. See what can happen.
Yes. And we definitely saw that last year. So some good surprises there.
So until our next episode, final thoughts for me, anyways, is congratulations to all of the Hall of Famers going into the Hockey Hall of Fame. For me, I think, listen, nobody deserves it more than Patrice Bergeron. I would love to see him back with the Bruins organization in some capacity when he's ready to do so and he's got more time on his hands. Please make sure that you like and subscribe for more content and be sure to leave a rating and review to help other Bruins fans find us. You can support our podcast by joining our Patreon or following us on our socials at Tape to Tape MK at tapetotapemk.substack.com. Any closing thoughts?
Go Bees!
Go Bruins!